What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 47, Episode 3. It's a bad day to be a podcaster on Survivor. So, my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and I feel like maybe this kind of cramped our Survivor style as far as our chances of ever going on the show, because, like Rachel said, not a great time to be a podcaster.
Nope. Also a bad day to go on the journey in episode 1. Both people who went, TK and Asia, in the journey that replaced the Sweat vs. Savvy challenge are now both gone.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, but I guess what they say about, the social connections at the beginning of the game are the most important connections to have kind of ended up being true.
Yeah, like it'll be interesting. Like, is this truly lack of bonding because you missed a couple hours that first day? It could also be like rubbing people the wrong way. Seems like for TK, it might have been rubbing people the wrong way. For Asia, Teeny was trying to save a spot for her in their alliance back at camp, but wasn't able to get in the alliance, kind of thing. So it is interesting. Like, is it truly lack of bonding? There's probably other factors at play here too, but I do think it's fascinating. Both of the new Sweat vs. Savvy people are eliminated now.
Yeah, I do think for Asia, part of it is the fact that Rome also had really good luck on his journey, because I think that, his steal a vote definitely became like a reason to stay in with him. So part of it is, we talk a lot about how advantages shape the course of the game. And I feel like that definitely is an example of how an advantage shaped the course of the game.
I agree, which we'll get to later this episode. Speaking of advantages, we saw Gabe play the idol last week. This week, coming in, we see Sue is holding a grudge against Kyle because Kyle wrote her name down last week. She has this confessional at the start of the episode, basically saying, like, Kyle is underestimating me. Men are always underestimating me as like a pilot, as a flight school instructor. I feel like we were talking about this last week, but I don't necessarily feel like Kyle, but I feel like Gabe, like we said last week, is definitely underestimating Sue.
Yeah, I feel like Sue is definitely being underestimated. And I also feel like there's something to be said for, like, I don't want to say vindictiveness, but like vindictiveness. If someone wants to get you out because they feel like personally slighted by you, I feel like that's more dangerous than someone who wants to get you out for like just strategic reasons. So you got to be aware of also how you make people feel.
Yeah, it'll be funny to see, like, does the Sue Kyle beef keep on happening or are they able to squash it, kind of thing? Kyle, it's squashed. It's a one sided beef with Sue not wanting to work with Kyle because he wrote her name down. But we do see Gabe wants Kyle to stick around, thinks Kyle is very trustworthy. Also, maybe makes sense, like strength wise for the tribe. Kyle's very tall, seems very strong, could be helpful in challenges. Like we saw, very good swimmer diving down this episode. So, one reason to keep Kyle around. We see Gabe throwing out Tiana's name to Kyle, and it's also interesting. We learn that Kyle doesn't want to write down Tiana's name, wouldn't want to write down her name. So then we see Kyle going to Tiana, and then they're trying to bring in Sue and Caroline and throwing out Gabe's name. So I think if this tribe goes back to tribal, it'll be very like spicy because it could be like a 3-2 with Gabe and the women going together versus Kyle and Tiana. Or does someone flip and then Tiana's still the one that goes home?
Mm-hmm. I will say one of the things I've been enjoying so far about this season is that there's not one obvious like super sucky tribe. All three tribes have now gone to tribal, which I can't remember the last time that happened when we started with the three tribe season. Like, yeah.
I think it's never happened. I think that was like the fun stat for the episode. I think ever in Survivor.
Well, I love to see it just because I feel like what we've seen in kind of past seasons where you just have one really dysfunctional, sucky tribe. Like, it's not as fun. So I do think, though, it does make some of the questions we've been asking, like, is voting someone out for tribe strength really worth it? And it seems like it might be, like, if you're trying to keep your tribe stronger, because it seems like all three tribes are pretty on par with tribe strength if all three of them are able to both win and lose against each other.
Yeah, I think that's very fascinating. So it is like, okay, we said last week, if you're voting out TK, like, sure, you can vote out a strong guy. You just have to be stronger than the other two teams. And so, like, blue team, they won this week in the challenge. So voting out TK didn't necessarily hurt them because they can still win a challenge compared to if you keep voting out people that help you win, then ultimately you'll start losing more kind of thing. But I do think it is interesting seeing all three tribes go to tribal. It's like there's no Jonathan, no one person that's like helping your team so much that you're so OP and winning all the time. But then on the other hand, you don't have the teams that just suck so bad that all the people just can't work together or are slightly physically less fit or are just slightly bad at everything to the point that they can never win anything.
Slightly bad at everything is how I'm going to start describing myself moving forward. Um, but yeah, I feel like it definitely is a lot more interesting. And I feel like also part of it like gets into the head game of Survivor, where like even if it's just like, oh, we won or we lost the first two um immunities in a row, like that can get into your head as far as like morale. Because we did
Mhm.
see like the idea of, morale, not sleeping well come up on some of the tribes where like how where do we rank comfort in terms of like what to focus on and like strategy wise.
Yeah, I for Sue and Kyle here, I feel like Sue should put like you have to not forgive and forget, but you forgive and you remember it because I do worry like you never want this kind of weird one-sided grudge. If Kyle doesn't think that he can work with her, it's just going to cause problems like we saw when Kyle is trying to bring in Tiana, Sue, and Caroline. He's like, I just told Sue that she's being called a goat and she doesn't even care about it. That could rub people the wrong way. So it's like you want to be fake good with everyone. So hopefully she can be at least fake good to just have some kind of relationship. You might hate them after, but just fake it.
I don't know though, because I feel like this episode we did see a lot of people like not even bothering to fake liking each other. Like the same thing kind of happened with Rome and Asia, where it's like they were not even pretending to like each other, like with the whole thing with the fish. So like maybe new era Survivor is you don't have to fake liking someone if you really don't like them, as long as you have the alliance to back you up.
Yeah, you need the alliance to back you up. Otherwise, if you have a hate with someone, they're just going to vote you out.
Yeah. So I think that's a really big if. So
So, speaking of beef with people, we go to the Yellow Tribe. Sam and Annika are having some beef throughout this first part of the episode. We see them having beef over hanging the clothesline and how taunt it should be and hanging the clothes on there. I think Andy has some really good observations and confessional here. So, like, snaps for Andy, very good. He was looking at their actions, how they were talking to each other, they're annoyed with each other. So he was like, okay, this is good data because people can like fake nice, like we're saying. You might fake nice, fake an alliance, but it's harder to fake this annoyance over something so small and dumb like the clothesline being taunt.
yeah, I feel like you don't pick a fight like that just because like you're trying to make it seem like you're not buddy buddy with someone. So I'm very curious, like if Yellow does go back to tribal council, how that ends up shaking up. Because I feel like also it's one of those things where people might like bicker with each other, but then when it actually comes down to voting, it's like, okay, like we bicker, but also I
Mhm.
recognize that like not voting for this person is probably my smartest move. So
That's true. Like brother sister bickering, but you're able to put those differences aside and come together when it's needed in time for a vote. I thought this scene was also funny because Andy's just standing there, like twirling his hair in the background. And I was like, okay, I think I have to stand now.
Yeah. I love Andy's hair this episode also. Like they had a little clip of like talking about Andy's hair. It really volumized. I didn't know that salt water was a good volumizer, but his hair was like looking very luscious.
Yeah, his hair does look really good.
Andy, drop your hair care.
True. I also thought Sam trying to chop the rope was scary, like people chopping the rice bags last time with the knives. Sam chopping the rope like straight on rather than sawing it. I was like, yo, someone is going to get hurt here.
Yeah, that was scary. The chopping the rope when people were like right there, I was like, ah. But I'm glad no one actually got hurt because that is the last thing we need.
The only thing that's hurt is everyone watching this wondering how Sam has never eaten watermelon, pineapple, he's eaten a raspberry, and I'm like, what the heck? What do you eat every single day? If you've never had so many of these like very common fruits and vegetables, it was giving child who's a very picky eater, but like as an adult, you shouldn't be that picky.
It's giving chicken tenders and mac and cheese. But yeah, I was like shocked because I feel like even a lot of people I know who are picky eaters will eat like fruit because fruit tastes good. So I don't know. I think for me, the weird part was he was like, I just never really thought about trying it. Like I've been around watermelon. I was never curious. Like, that boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's like gym bro energy of like eating chicken and rice every day and then that's all you need to eat for your protein. But then the balanced diet, where are you getting your other nutrients from?
We may never know. Maybe he's like taking a multivitamin.
So another good thing for Andy this episode, besides his observations, he is getting in with Sierra. He offers her his shot in the dark as well. So Andy's on the up and up. Basically, for me, I think shot in the dark is sort of useless. Like, first of all, you have to play it and like know that you're getting a majority of the votes, so then you have to play it. And then even if you do play it and you're getting votes, it's still a 1 in 6 shot. So it's like, okay, sort of like a useless thing to hold on to. But him offering it to Sierra, like she didn't have to ask or anything like that, but him just giving it up, I thought was really good. It shows that he could be trusted. She was worried that maybe he might play the shot in the dark, so him giving it up is good. Maybe she could go and like be like, Andy doesn't have it anymore, easy vote out. But that's something like, maybe you'd want to work with him now because he's showing that he trusts you by giving this up.
I feel like if I were Andy, I would have waited until after the immunity challenge to do that. Like after you know whether or not you're going to be going to tribal, just because to me, it felt really weird that he was like, here, have my shot in the dark when they don't even know if they're going to tribal yet. I'm kind of like, it's giving too much. Like, like I feel like sometimes people trying to build trust make themselves look more suspicious because they're like, here, have this thing that you didn't even ask for. And it's like, you feel pressure to trust them, even though, like you said, a shot in the dark is basically useless. So it's not actually that much trust giving it to you. So I don't know. It was a strange move. I'm interested to see how it plays out in the long term.
I could see how it could sketch people out. I'm on the side of like doing it before tribal, like now could be better because it shows like, okay, I trust you. We don't even have the threat of tribal council. To me, if someone did that when tribal council is looming, like, oh, we only have a few hours left, it's giving more desperation. Like, oh, you're only giving this to me now because you need me. We're going to tribal. You think we're going to vote you out, compared to when tribal isn't even on the table yet, might show a little bit more trust. Like, okay, it's not even an option that you're going to get voted out. It feels less desperate right now to me.
I guess that makes sense. Maybe there could be like a nice middle ground, but to me it felt weird. To me, it felt desperate that he did it before the immunity challenge. So
Okay, interesting. Two sides of the desperation.
yeah.
But I think it's good for Sam and Sierra that Andy wants to work with them. Maybe like last week, I feel like we're sort of worried that Sam and Sierra could be a target because of their fake showmance, their relationship working together. But now that Andy legitimately seems down to work with them, maybe it won't even matter once Andy knows that Sam was lying about the idol and they'll still all work together well. I would be interested in hearing from like Rachel and Annika, like they don't might realize it might be a 4-1 vote or like I guess 3-2 vote. I would love to hear their strategy about this because we do hear like Annika going to the girls and it's like, okay, telling Sierra and Rachel that she actually lost her vote at the journey this week. So maybe they're thinking it's like a girls thing plus Sam and they're still voting Andy out. Like, I'd want to hear more from their point of view on this.
Yeah, but I guess the fact that we didn't hear their point of view means that it's going to be unimportant moving forward, question mark. It's always interesting in these early episodes to try to figure out whether or not something was edited in such a way because it was unimportant or just because they didn't have enough time to show everything.
Yeah, maybe more so unimportant because given like the Sam and Annika beef, we hear Sam saying he wants to vote Annika out. Annika loses her vote. Andy wants to work with Sam and Sierra. It could just be like Sam, Sierra, Andy voting Annika out, and then it doesn't really matter what Rachel is doing. So that's why we're not hearing their thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Sad day.
Sad day indeed.
Maybe shouldn't have voted John out, and then they wouldn't be on the bottom.
How many times can we mention John? I feel like John is going to be our Jelinski, where we just like every tribal council we're going to mention John. So John, if you're listening to this podcast, we're holding a torch for you.
So we also see Sam peeved about them not using the fishing kit. They're going to go fix the shelter when they have a fishing kit. Then we cut to Rome using and potentially hogging the fishing kit. Like, seemed like from the edit, Rome was maybe hogging it, like he wasn't really letting other people use it. People said they wanted to try. Then he sort of dissuaded them, like, oh, the water's really rough. You're going to have to swim and tread water. It's really hard. And then they're like, oh, maybe I don't want to do it then. But then he was peeved about no one helping him. So it's sort of a hard situation.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you do wonder, like the survivor people who are really good at fishing probably get that good at fishing because they're able to practice. And then, I don't know, it feels like Rome just wanted to be upset. And, you know, he was going to find something to be upset about regardless. Like, I feel like even if people had helped him, like with the pot or whatever, he still would have been like, well, you didn't do this, this, and this. And so, like, it felt very petty to me that he ate 2 whole fish because he was just like, Asia, you're not in my alliance. Why am I fishing for you? Like, y'all are still on the same tribe. How she performs in the immunities challenge is, in fact, important to you. So, I don't know. It felt very petty, very catty, and it made me uncomfortable watching that scene.
Yeah, I feel like he could be peeved because we see him ask them to like clean the pot, start the fire, and then they didn't do that. And then you come back and you're like, oh, why didn't you do all these things I asked you? Sort of like, okay, a parent might be like, oh, take the meat out of the freezer. When I come home, then we can start cooking. The kid doesn't take the meat out, and you're like, okay, well, now we can't even cook anything because it hasn't defrosted. So I could see Rome being mad, like, why didn't any of you start the fire or clean the pot? Like, makes sense. But then it's like, you can't really be mad if they didn't fish. If you're hogging all the fishing gear, like, you can't be mad about that. And I feel like definitely rude to do this in real life, just like eating all the food in front of everyone. But I guess, okay, Survivor isn't fair. He caught the fish, so he can do what he wants with the fish. Might peeve people the wrong way too. Like, everyone notices, like, oh, you ate 2 out of the 4 and you gave everyone else scraps. But like, no one can say anything about it because then it's like, it's an awkward fine line to walk because no one can say anything about it.
No one can say anything, but everyone does notice. And I'm curious, like, sometimes when everyone notices something but no one says anything, that just means that they're waiting for the right time to, like, give their comeuppance. Like, you know, people are noting this about Rome, and I feel like there will be a point where that kind of comes back to bite him in the butt. So I'm curious to see when that point will be. I'm also curious though, like, does he think that because he's the only one fishing right now that he is like, you know, you have those people who are like, oh, I'm the provider, they can't vote me out. But I feel like people would be okay with voting Rome out despite his fishing skills because of the whole thing where like no one else even got to try to fish. So
That's what I was thinking too. Like, oh, is he trying to hog the fishing gear so that it like you can't vote him out because he's the one providing for everyone? But I agree. If it truly is like, oh, no one else can swim, no one else can fish, then maybe you keep that person around. But I'm like, these people seem capable enough that even if Rome was not there, they could try with the sling and try to get fish kind of thing. And it's like, okay, we've seen in the past other survivors, they might like hoard food or hide food for themselves. Like, I think the difference is it's so public here. If like he wanted to keep fish for himself, I would say, okay, catch like 10, keep 5 for yourself, give 5 for everyone else. But if you're catching 4 and then in front of everyone eating 2, that's probably like less good for your social game compared to other people. They're like, okay, I'm like hoarding coconuts for myself, but no one else knows that because I'm keeping it private kind of thing.
yeah, I also feel like it's only day 7. Like that's the kind of thing that I'm paying attention to because it seems pretty early in the game to be like, you know, making enemies like this. But who knows? Maybe Rome is going deep.
It's one of those things I could see like the Asia versus Rome and the fish here. People will remember and then they're like, okay, if they're petty enough too, they could be like, Rome was petty about the fish. I'm going to be petty and not give you $1,000,000. Haha, go buy some fish with your other money.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Rome, we get to the journey. Kyle, Annika, and Rome are selected. Kyle and Rome picked rocks out of the people that wanted to go, and they won the rock draw. Annika volunteered, and nobody objected on yellow team. I thought it was funny, weird. We see Rome saying, oh, thank God TK got voted out. I really didn't like him because of his ego. And then I'm like, what? Is Rome not the exact same way on TV?
Well, I was also kind of like, how much can you really tell of somebody's ego when like your entire interaction with them is like to immunity challenges, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course he's going to be egotistical if he wins the immunity challenge. Like, I didn't really get that. Sometimes I wonder how people develop their impressions of others in the game, like not on their tribe. Because I'm also, how did people get the idea that Sam and Sierra were like a couple? Like, how did they get there? So
Yeah, it's just like observing, watching on the mat chats at challenges, at the first challenge, all these things. Same with like Marianne thinking Zach was cute after one episode kind of thing. You're like, oh, I would think they're thinking Sam and Sierra are both very attractive people. They're probably like, then you're next thinking, okay, they're probably going to date because they're both attractive.
the math doesn't math for me, but I guess if it maths for them, they can write their Sam Sierra fan fiction.
So I thought it was funny. Rome said that, and then like in the episode, he says, "If Boston Rob needs a godson, I'm the godson." Then he's also saying, "Just cancel Survivor season 47. It's Survivor Rome."
Though a Survivor set in Rome, Italy would be kind of awesome. Just saying.
Yeah, I was thinking. I do like the name Rome. I'm like, let me add that to my list of names because I'm like, that's actually a really cool name.
Yeah. But yeah, I do wonder also what what everyone's opinion was of each other on the journey, because we saw them like sharing info with each other, but we didn't really hear them be like, oh, this is my impression of this person, this is my impression of this person. Like, it was mostly just like, oh, they shared this information. So like, I feel like we got more of Sam and Sierra's reaction to Rome, and Rome being like, oh, Sam and Sierra are together, than we got Annika's reaction to Rome.
Yeah, I feel like we got a lot of like Sam and Sierra couple reactions from the other teams. But I guess it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll see next week. Like, okay, Rome was saying, oh, I'm on the bottom. Seoul and Asia are on the top. They're running things. I'm on the bottom, which is good to say because maybe like Kyle and Annika will feel bad for him. And then they'll tell their tribes, like, okay, Rome said he's on the bottom and Seoul and Asia are at the top. So then if you're thinking, okay, a merge or a swap, maybe we try to bring Rome in because he's saying he's on the bottom. That could be good for Rome. He could get more connections from that. But it will be interesting. It's like, okay, when they see Asia's gone, they might question, like you said, they were on the top. How is Asia gone now? But then Rome could be like, oh, I had to play my idol and that's happened. But then if you have to say it was like a 3-1-1 vote kind of thing, that sort of is like you didn't idle Asia out of the game. So it'll be interesting to see if like people question their stories.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of funny if Rome's downfall was because he was like, oh yeah, Seoul and Asia are on the top, and then immediately voted Asia out. Like, that would be funny to me personally.
Cursed.
Yeah.
So everyone here on this journey, they go down a separate bag. You have to pick one bag in this game at least. There's no like abstaining or sitting out. You are there. You have basically a 1 in 3 chance to win an advantage. The other 2 items in the bag are lose your votes. You could play twice to lose your vote twice, or you could get an advantage in one of these draws. So we see Kyle and Annika lose their vote. Interesting for them because Kyle and Annika are sort of on the bottom of their teams right now. Like Annika not having a vote, probably really bad for her uh, because her and Rachel would need both votes in order to try to like bring Andy over because Sam and Sierra aren't voting each other out. So like that's going to be really bad for them. Kyle, bad, but maybe less bad if like Gabe wants to protect him.
Yeah. I feel like the thing that's like interesting about this is that there were 3 people, and it was exactly the 1 in 3 shot. And I feel like the person who could do the most with the steal a vote is not the person who got the steal a vote. So I was like, come on, man. I would have loved to see like Kyle with a steal a vote or Annika with a steal a vote. I feel like Rome getting a steal a vote when he already had an idol, I was like, lame. But I do think it's going to be interesting how it goes down, especially because of like not telling everyone whether or not you lost your vote, like that kind of thing. So, like, how do you hide not having a vote when there's only 5 people?
Yeah, like Kyle told everyone, his whole team knows that he lost his vote. Annika lied to the main group, just said, oh, I didn't play the game. So lying about if you have to play or not. But then she tells the women that she lost her vote, which Sierra's going to tell Sam. They'll probably tell Andy kind of thing. So it's like they know Annika is basically a sitting duck if they go to tribal. Like, okay, she doesn't have her vote. She can't play the shot in the dark. Like, Sam is already annoyed with her and they want to bring Andy in. So, could be a very easy vote out.
Yeah, it would be kind of a lame vote out though. Like, no way to even like protect yourself. But they're not the ones who went to tribal this episode, so I guess we're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, so Rome, so lucky. He gets the advantage and he gets a steal a vote. He lies to the tribe and says he lost his vote, and that's the story he's going with. Except then he tells Teeny that he got a steal a vote. Um, For Teeny's point of view here, I feel like it does make sense. Like it's best to work with a person who has all of the advantages rather than go against them, fighting a harder battle, like trying to fight against an idol and to steal a vote. And like if this person's already so lucky or smart to find and get these advantages, they can probably find more. And it's like Rome is not lying about this stuff. He's forthcoming. He's sharing the information. He seems very loyal, even though Teeny sort of effed him over a little bit, telling Keyshawn right in front of Rome, looking at the box. But like, it makes sense to go with that person with the advantages. I would think if Rome didn't have these advantages, then he would probably be voted out first.
Yeah, I think part of it is though, do you want an ally with advantages if that ally isn't willing to use their advantages on you? Like, I don't know. I feel like if Teeny had been the one on the chopping block, I'm not sure Rome would have used his idol on her. And so I'm kind of like, what's the vibes? And then like, is staying someone with someone just because they have advantages like, yeah, it can be good in the short term, but in the long term, you might be hitching your horse to the wrong wagon because eventually I feel like there's going to be a point where Rome is a liability as an ally. So,
yeah, I would say working with him, Genevieve, now in the pre merge makes a lot of sense because it's like, okay, you know where these advantages are, and he's like telling you about it. Going into merge later game, yeah, obviously you probably want to vote that person out, but like maybe he could find the idol at the merge and then you know where the idol is. I think maybe Andy or someone said it this season already, but it's like you'd want to know where the advantages are. That is very powerful. That information. Having the advantage might be sometimes a disadvantage, even where people want to target you or they think you're threatening, or like Rome has a great resume already. He already has 2 advantages. So it's like that's a big threat. I think right now, for like this first vote and going in the pre merge, you might as well try to work with Rome since he's telling you all this good information.
yeah, that does make sense. I guess like I said, we'll have to see how this plays out as we move forward.
Yeah, I think it's sort of funny. Basically, like the advantage is forcing people to work with him. Maybe like even if they didn't want to, it sort of reminds me like, oh, if you're super rich, people might be using you for your money, but they don't necessarily really like you. But I do think here, safer to work with him than against him. Maybe you can use those advantages, or like you learn more of the game dynamics of like, oh, what happens at journeys because he's telling you what really happens at the journey. So it's good information, but he might be being used.
He's just survivor rich.
Yeah, like Drea.
Yeah. Bless him.
So we get to the immunity challenge. You have to do swimming and jumping off obstacles, dive down and get buoys, go over a balance beam, and then there's this seahorse puzzle at the end. We learned that Keyshawn just learned how to swim before coming out here. Good for him for getting swimming lessons. Not everyone does that, so good. Nice that they let him participate in the challenge too, instead of forcing him to sit out because of the swimming skills. I guess we don't really know Genevieve's swimming skills, but nice of them to let him participate. And he wasn't bad though, like his swimming didn't make his team lose. But yeah, I was surprised that like Rome, considering how it seemed so adamant that Rome wanted to do the solo part of the challenge and wouldn't let Soul go solo, that Rome let him Keyshawn swim.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it worked out. No, it didn't work out actually. But yeah, I don't really know. I mean, like you said, good on Keyshawn for like learning how to swim. I wish that like we got to hear everyone's internal monologue as they're making decisions, because like the confessionals are great and everything, but like there's always these contradictions that we're left trying to figure out.
Yeah, like maybe it's just because Rome like dislikes Soul. So he's like, no, I'm doing the solo part. Keyshawn, I like Keyshawn. We're working together. Keyshawn can swim. And maybe Genevieve really wanted to go sit out because then we see she's looking under the bench for a clue or an advantage. So it's like maybe Genevieve too didn't care whether she was participating or not. So they're like, let Keyshawn participate. I want to go look for clues over there. So maybe that played a little bit into it. But I thought it was fun to see the pre-tribe strategizing of everyone's teams. I like that. They should include that more.
Yes, they really should. I also like hearing more about people's like lives before the game and like what they learned to like go on Survivor, just because I feel like as we're getting more and more super fans cast, it's really interesting to be like, here's this like weird specific thing that I did to like learn how to be on Survivor. Like who was it last season that did the like hand grippy things? You know?
Charlie.
Charlie did the hand gripping. Keyshawn learned how to swim. Rome was talking earlier this season about learning how to make fire, right? So it's like, I love hearing about people's like little prep.
Yeah, everyone's learning and building puzzles now. So poor Andy, he sort of has a really hard time on the balance beam, but it's okay because his team catches up. The puzzle, like we said, this is like the fire puzzle that we did. These kinds of puzzles, very difficult. I feel like they're also hard to catch up on if you are very far behind because these puzzles get way easier once you have more pieces in. So yeah.
I also feel like they're harder to copy than the like a slide puzzle or like a flat puzzle would be, but that might just be vibes.
Yeah, I'd say harder to copy too, because it's like, oh, let me look at the shape of this and the color of this. Way more difficult. I don't like these puzzles because they're so hard. But yellow, they win first. Blue is second, and then red is last. Like we said, first time we are seeing all three teams go to tribal in the first 3 episodes, which is fun. Pre-tribal, we see that it is Teeny and Keyshawn in the middle. It's like a 2-2-2 with Genevieve and Rome and Asia and Saul as other duos. Teeny, we see them saying that they would rather vote Saul to Rome. And I thought this was interesting because Rome agrees with Teeny and what they're talking about. So it is interesting because it's like, okay, Teeny can persuade Rome. It's not just like Rome's way or the highway, Rome being like so adamant, like, no, 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 this is my plan. I need to do XYZ. But Teeny is able to persuade him and or like is able to make Rome think that it's his plan. Either way, get Rome to change his mind. So it is interesting to see, like, Rome just isn't bossing everyone around. Like, okay, this is my plan. We're voting Asia out. You stick with it or else. But he is moldable, which is potentially a good alliance member. At least he isn't being so bossy. So it's like, okay, maybe you can work with him because at least he's flexible.
Yeah, at least he's flexible. I do like it. The way you were describing Teeny almost made it seem like they were like gaslighting Rome into like liking their plan, which like gaslight gatekeep girl boss Teeny. I'm here for it. But yeah, I do think he is not as bad of an ally as he could be.
Yeah, like given the negative edit for Rome thus far, you would think he'd be like the dictator out there, like, no, 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 it's this, 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 not letting anyone else talk. So it's interesting, like, okay, even though he's getting the negative edit and potentially annoying his tribe mates, he can be worked with, and that's all you need in Survivor.
Yeah. And I feel like that also might be part of the reason why people are willing to work with him. Like, it's not just that he has the advantages, like, he has the advantages and he's willing to, like, not just dictate. So, yeah.
Exactly. So then we also see Teeny and Keyshawn. They both do want to work with Asia. So they go and tell her about the soul plan. They also tell her that Rome does have an idol. They're telling Asia basically that she has to vote soul in order to save herself. But Asia doesn't want to vote soul out and pushes back. I think this is interesting though, because it's like from Asia's point of view, if she's thinking it's me and Sol as a duo, Teeny and Kishan as a duo, and like they're telling me Sol needs to go, why is it automatically like my duo partner needs to go? Why can't we just make it a 2-2-2? If like all of us are working in this together, we just 2-2-2 it on Rome and Genevieve. It doesn't really matter if he has the idol. So it makes sense, I guess, that like she would push back. It would be interesting to know like, were Teeny and Keyshawn like laying it out, or was it coming off confusing? Like, it's 2-2-2. Because if it is more confusing, you can see like, okay, why would Asia want to vote out Soul when you could easily do a 2-2-2 and they could all be safe?
Yeah, and I feel like also there's an element of like you never want to just willingly give up your closest ally. Like no matter what happens, if you're like, oh, anyone but me immediately, that can make you seem really desperate. And so like I feel like if she had rolled over and immediately been like, yep, I'm voting Soul, like that wouldn't have actually like helped much.
Yeah, like it could be seen as sketchy, like, she was willing to throw you under the bus with like one conversation. That's a bad ally, that's a bad alliance member, just so that she could save herself. Um, so it's interesting. It's like, were they actually dropping a lot of hints from like the edit? It seems like, okay, they were telling her he's got an idol, and they were dropping hints like flip in order to save your ally. um but yeah, if like you think they're all working together, why not make it a 2-2-2 split vote? But seems like from the conversations that we saw, Asia not wanting to vote Soul out basically turns Teeny and Kashan against her, and they flip the vote and then vote Asia out.
Yeah, I think one thing that like contestants on Survivor have like consistently said is that the edit like makes things seem obvious that were very much not obvious on the island, because like we get 1 hour of what is a 48-hour experience, so they can like give us the hour that like tells the story that they want. And so I wonder like how much of that occurred when it came to like Asia and the editing there.
Yeah, and it's like, we talked about Teeny recognizing Asia from Rob Has a Podcast at the start of the season. For me, I'm like, okay, Teeny, you make the correct move. Like, you can't throw your entire game away just because you recognize someone. Like, if you start pushing so hard for Asia to stay around or for Asia to be in the alliance when Rome and Asia have beef with each other, you might look a little bit sketchy. Like, why does Teeny want her around so much? What do they have going on? Why does she like want to save her and vote Soul out? Like that kind of thing. I think it's smart for Teeny not to push too hard here to keep Asia. Even if like you recognize her or like her, it would be dumb to throw your own game away just because there's like a semi-celebrity on your tribe that you like or want to work with. It's like, if the tides aren't going that way, you got to let them go.
Yeah, I think we talk about it like every season. Oh dear, there's a spider on the wall right next to me that just distracted me very much. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Not the spider. We're focusing on the podcast. It's like we've said basically every season, like you can put in a good word for your ally, be like, hey, I would rather not vote for this person, but then it, like the only person you ever want to be super like adamant about like don't vote for this person is don't vote for me. Because like it's always a possibility that if you're like, no, we really can't vote Asia, then it's gonna be like, okay, we'll vote for you instead. Like,
yeah.
so.
Literally, it could change that fast. And I agree, like this early in the game doesn't make sense to throw your game away. Similarly, like last season, Hunter not playing the idol for Tevin at the merge, like, okay, that's a little bit too early to play it. But I think like later, if it's like, okay, this person is really like, I need them for my game, I only see a few options to the end, I really would like them around, maybe you fight a little bit harder, but not in this first part of the game. It's a little bit too pushy.
Yeah, you don't want to be pushy.
So Rome plays the idol on himself, which is good, makes sense. It's a one tribal council idol. You might as well play it so you don't accidentally go home. That would be very embarrassing. It becomes a 3-1-1-1 vote, which to me, it seems like, okay, maybe you're like splitting the vote in case Asia or Seoul or someone plays a shot in the dark and somehow they're safe. So then you have like a vote on Seoul and stuff like that. So you could revote.
Yeah, I feel like the 3-1-1. I was surprised that the vote shook out that way because I did think it was going to be closer, but it is what it is, I guess.
But RIP Asia. First out on your tribe has got to hurt as a Survivor podcaster. I feel like that's what I'd be afraid of going out there. Like, you can't let that happen.
Yeah, like, does she lose all of her podcasting cred now? Is Rob going to fire her? Who knows? Not me.
Yeah, if that happened to Alyssa and I, we would have to go into hiding.
Yeah, never podcast again.
Yeah, we would disappear off the internet. So maybe that would spoil the season. If we were on there, you'd be like, oh, they're not podcasting this season. It must be really bad for them.
Yep.
But I thought this was a fun episode. I'm excited to see what happens next week. Yeah, it's really up for grabs. Any of these tribes could go to tribal council next week and it'll be very spicy. So anyone going to tribal will be fun.
I want to see how a lot of this, because I feel like every tribe, because everyone's been to tribal council, they're all in like a very unique situation where the next tribal will be very important. So fingers crossed. I don't even know who I want to go to tribal. I'm just excited to see who loses.
Me too. So I thought it was a fun episode. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of the episode. Did you think Andy telling Sierra about the shot in the dark, giving it to her, was desperate doing it before tribal? Or do you think, or do you think this was good timing and he shouldn't wait until they lose an immunity challenge? Do you think they all wanted to work with Rome or just started to work with Rome because he got more advantages? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.